Here is Arthur.
So my background is I've primarily been in different forms of real estate development my whole life. I'm 44. I've been doing it since I was probably 17 years old through construction and other things. I still run a home building company. I still run a land development company, and I've run some other manufacturing companies around the country that are all mine. And about 5 years ago, I got involved in the storage business for several different reasons. I have a pretty large single-family rental portfolio. I have a bunch of multifamily properties. The thing I like the most about storage, it's much more hands-off in ways. You know, all but 2 of our projects, we build, we develop, and we flag them or do a licensing agreement. It's not really a franchise. We do a licensing agreement with either Public Storage, Extra Space, or CubeSmart, which we find to be the best way to manage the projects. You get their national reservation network. If somebody goes on Google and they're moving from Chicago to California or vice versa or wherever they're moving, and they're already in a public storage, no public storage, they Google it, we got their reservation network. They'll probably go to a Public Storage, CubeSmart, whatever. So we like being there. Plus it gives a little bit of added value at exit. Cap rate is a little bit better on a storage that is, you know, one of the national brands. So most of our projects are the national brands. I have some that I have personally that are not, that I've acquired and still will acquire. But all of our major development stuff is in those brands. Second largest shareholder of Your Space America. And between everything else I do, I handle most of the capital and finance side of that company. HV Properties is just a personal company of mine. I do land entitlement, land and development, home building, and I do own some rental properties in a subsidiary entity, about 300 units total. EBO Investment Holdings has a pretty diverse holding. Truck body manufacturing company, on a glass company. It's also heavily involved in some restaurant, bar, nightclub spaces, 2 different mining companies. And then I also do a bunch of private hard money lending, asset-backed loans, not just real estate, but any asset I'll lend on. I'm doing some ADUs or additional units in California. I'll lend on those. Sometimes I own them. So that's really the background of all facets of real estate, but I really do like the storage. Our vision right now is to really create, in my opinion, one of the largest consolidations of storage. We're going to try to build and develop between $5 and $7 billion of storage over the next 7 to 10 years. There will be some projects that we go into that we will sell, create investor liquidity. There'll be other projects we're going to probably hold long-term and probably transfer into a REIT, because a REIT is a non-taxable exchange. You can go to REIT shares. So if you build up $1 billion portfolio and you sell it to a REIT and you take $1 billion worth of shares in the REIT, there's no tax on that event. Our average project, from the time we acquire the dirt, I should say contract the dirt, during that period, we do all the approval processes. We're in a lot of areas that are quite difficult to get approved. I actually like going to cities and states that don't really like storage because they have a higher barrier to entry. And if you do get it approved, nobody's going to open up down the street next to you, and it takes 3 years to get through the approval process. We're not closing on the dirt until we get an approval. And from the time we close on the dirt, usually we're under construction within about 6 months. ARCO's done a really good job with that. We look at around 100 sites nationwide at any one time before we pick 1 or 2 sites. Really are looking for rooftop count, number of people in the area, supply of storage. We look for undersupplied markets, high barrier to entry, and we also are always looking for areas where the rents are a little bit above average. And then of course we are buying some projects that we rehab, but most of it's ground up construction. Average rate of return over the last 5 years, and then the main partner in this particular transaction, Russ Colvin, in his previous company, averaged about a 39% IRR. 3-year holding, although I think we're going to hold a little bit longer now, probably 4 years, to try to maximize the exit. Average equity multiple has been 2.26, although the one we just sold was a 3.1x in under 3 years, but that was a bit of an anomaly. I like these because you're not only getting equity appreciation, you're getting a little bit of cash flow along the way, but you also get pretty significant tax benefits through the first couple of years, cost segregation, because most of the storage building, all of the interior corridor, all the lighting, all the roll-up doors, everything that's not part of the superstructure, you can write off at a much more accelerated rate. Especially under the big beautiful bill, there's a lot of benefit. Example, Owens, that was finished last year, We've already done the cost segregation study, and it's got about a $62 or $62,000 per 100,000 first year deduction. Russ formed the company, ended up meeting me because I do a lot of lending, and I ended up buying and acquiring for the company the first few sites that they did. I bought those sites, JV'd the sites with the company, and ended up becoming the second largest shareholder and partner in the company. And I've kind of done the finance side of the company ever since for the development. He built 2 different storage companies prior to this, did well, and before that he was at Core. And then he has a little fascination with nuclear weapons and worked on a policy for that for years. Bill is a smaller partner in the company, acts as our chairman, does compliance for all the capital raising, used to run a broker-dealer, and he's still involved heavily on that side. We do some stuff with retail BD. I handle anything that's not broker-dealer developed. Robert and I have done business together for about 25 years, mostly in real estate finance and a couple of operating companies we own together. We're partners in 3 different mining operations in Africa and 1 coal mining operation in Eastern Kentucky. And then he has kind of a diverse background in finance on the debt side. So we have a pretty good team that covers development, finance, debt, and I'm probably the one that's got the most experience in all 3. He's been in the company for a while. He acts as our CFO. That's our more or less analyst. Ran 2 other storage companies, handles all of our analysts, all of the underwriting, all of the financial projections, and all of this is emailed to you if I jump through it kind of quickly. A little bit more of our team. We run a smaller team, it's 8 people, but it's enough to do what we're doing right now. We have 7 projects currently under construction and about 10 in the pipeline. Handles all of our entitlement, which is pretty much a full-time job, traveling to city council meetings, hearings, getting neighbors to agree, convincing neighbors we're not going to build a shit box next to them, that we're going to make it look relatively attractive. Most of our projects look more like an apartment building or an office building than it does a storage. We'll get to that in a second. Me, about $300 million in financing under that company, and I've done about $1 billion in financing total since 2006.
Why did you pick storage? I know you're in residential development too.
I like storage because it's definitely one of the easiest asset classes to manage. You have to do it well, but it's not toilets, tenants, and trauma. Somebody doesn't pay, we can get them out quickly. In storage, I can sweep it out in 30 minutes and have it ready to re-rent and probably have it backfilled in days, not months or years.
It's nice because it's kind of like multifamily conceptually in the fact that if one person doesn't pay, you still have 100, 500, or however many other units that are coming in and paying, but you don't have all the trauma and drama and that human component of having to deal with tenants. I mean, they're basically concrete boxes and they just cash flow and pump out money, and there's not a ton of management. And then you can partner with these large management brands that have big names, and they'll help get them filled up and run everything for you.
And I think that's an important thing. In most forms of commercial real estate, if you have a tenant move out, it's industrial, it may take you 6 months, 2 years to get another industrial tenant that fits a particular building. You may have to do a tremendous amount of tenant improvement. In a retail space, if it was a restaurant, you may have to tear some stuff out, or it wants to be a restaurant, you may have to do hundreds of thousands of dollars of tenant improvement. If it's an apartment, you're at least going to be doing paint and carpet, and all of those have commissions associated with it. Generally, if you have a new tenant come in, the broker's going to want pretty significant commission on bringing that new tenant in, where in this, literally, if they don't pay, send them a notice, they don't have tenancy rights, literally, you can lock the fucker, put it up for auction. Hopefully the auction generates enough money to cover the rent or not, sweep son of a bitch out, and you got it re-rented very, very quickly, where, most other forms of real estate, even, an apartment may be a few months, or a commercial building could be 6 months, a year or longer, and warehouses and more specialized industrial space, though very good investments, can really take a long time to backfill. This really doesn't. You have multiple tenants. Most of our buildings are between 700 and 1,500 units. It's a very small portion of the overall spend. It takes you a little while to get them leased up, somewhere between 18 and 24 months. But once they're fully leased up, above 90%, you don't really feel the movement. If you have a 30-unit apartment building and 3 people move out, you're going to feel it. If you've got 1,000 units and 30 people move out, it's nothing. And then you continually backfill those. Most everybody's on automatic payment. We actually have a pretty low delinquency rate. Everyone needs storage. For the last 20 years, they have a consistent ROI. Storage was one of the only classes of real estate that was moderately up during the 2008 financial debacle. It actually didn't crash, and it has one of the lowest default rates of any other commercial real estate.
Don't get into too complex of construction. For example, we just looked up at a site that was in the Rhode Island market, and we really liked the numbers on it. It was brought to us. It was a proposed joint venture. One of my contacts had brought it over to us. We really wanted to work with the group. The numbers looked great, but we got the site in. Russ asked about the construction costs. We noticed that it was a little bit high. We looked at some of the contingencies, and we realized, hey, that contingency is going to be a lot more than what our normal construction contingency is. So if we compare it back to what we're building right now in Houston, Tucson, Owens, or Mount Hood, or Stadium, these are basically near square boxes. They go up 3 to 4 levels. Construction costs are $92 to $106. They stay within a range, and we're not taking too much risk. So we believe that we're going to be able to build these things on time and on budget. We use a very large contractor. As a general rule, they're number 1 or 2 in self-storage in the country. They're about $4 billion a year in annual revenue. We have a close relationship with the management over there. So we're trying to eliminate that risk.
And can you explain a little bit about what an opportunity zone is?
Very simple answer is, as long as you hold that investment for 10 years, you can exit it and you don't have to do a 1031 and all the profit is tax-free. So as long as you hold the investment for 10 years, the exit becomes tax-free. Cool feature to it is there is no recapture of the depreciation.
Amazing.
So whatever depreciation you have, you don't get recaptured at the time of exit. And if the profit on the deal is $10 million, at the end of 10 years, you don't have to 1031 that into another piece of real estate.
I think that's something that's important. We have about 6 deals currently right now that are in opportunity zones. So if you've had a capital gain within the last 6 months and you go into one of those projects, now you're stuck there for the 10 years. However, if you're in that deal, you can defer some tax on the front side, but the nice part is when you exit, you're not stuck in this 1031 cycle. At 10 years, it's your money, you can take it out, and it's tax-free. And all the depreciation along the way is not recaptured. You don't have a hit from that when you sell it. And the opportunity zones usually aren't in the best of areas, although we've done 4 deals now that I would say are in very good areas. That probably never should have been written into the opportunity zone code, but they were, and we took advantage of that. It's a tax-free exit. You'd have to get with your CPA. Some CPAs argue, some say you can, some say you can't, where you can roll a traditional 1031 into an op zone and still come out tax-free and not stay in the 1031 cycle, but that's for your individual tax person. Current projects right now, we have 2 that are completed in Vegas, Owens being 1. We have 2 under construction in Vegas, which is Henderson and Mount Hood by Nellis Air Force Base, which also has boat and RV parking. We have one that is about to complete sometime this month in Houston. It's on Hurley Street, and we have one completing in Phoenix this month as well, which is right behind Diamondback Stadium. That one, incidentally, was an opportunity zone, even though it's in a great area and it's surrounded by properties. I think the reason that might be an opportunity zone, that property was owned by John McCain. We bought it from the McCain Family Trust. And amazingly, the 2 blocks he owned wound up in the op zone. No idea how that happened, right behind the stadium. And then we have 4 projects in California on the books. One of them is Bakersfield, which will be starting very soon, which is also an opportunity zone project. And then we have one in Tucson, which is also opportunity zone. Now that one is under construction now. That was the groundbreaking about 6-8 weeks ago, and it's well underway. As far as open for investment, Henderson has a little bit left in it, which is non-op zone, so it's going to be about a 3 to 5 year exit, probably a 3x on the money. It pays a 10% pref during the hold period that it accrues until there's cash flow, and then it's a priority payment out from there. And as far as op zones left, there's a tiny bit in Bakersfield, and we're debating if we add some more RV storage, will bring a little bit more into Tucson. This is a little bit more about opportunity zone. This is the Bakersfield project. It's an interesting market. It's not quite a 2-acre site. It's going to be a smaller deal. It's only about 75,000 square feet. It's in a good populated area. The 5 mile population is over right around 250,000 people, and it has a good rent base. What I mean by that is it has good rents per square foot, especially on the new, and the competing projects in the area are primarily old roll-up door and a lot of non-climate controlled. And we found that The majority of people now prefer to store their things in climate control. One of our projects in Las Vegas has a mix of climate control, not climate control. You know, people put boats, they'll put some outdoor stuff in non-climate control, but if you want to put your furniture, your TVs, and everything else in climate control, especially in a market where it could be 120 degrees. Henderson, Nevada. This project is interesting. This is the one that will have the wine storage in it. It's in an area where this is probably the last storage, at least for a while, approved in Henderson. It was a bit of a battle. And on the other side of that gas station is a neighborhood. There's another neighborhood here, and there's a very, very nice apartment community back on this side of it. And one of the things that we see the most about that, the neighbors really didn't want it, but we've made it look more like another apartment building than a storage, and we were able to get it approved. And it has a very nice per square foot rent, higher than the rest of the Las Vegas market. Plus, it's a true bedroom community for Las Vegas without a lot of transient people. So most of the people that are there in Henderson are staying. Las Vegas, it's a very nice project, about 160,000 square feet total building, about 117,000 rentable. It's been, what, 5 months now, and it's about 40% occupied, which is significantly ahead of schedule for that size of a project. It was an opportunity zone project. What's interesting about it, it is also going to have a billboard component, which adds about $2 million of value because it'll have a billboard visible to the interstate. This one, construction will be completed end of this month. There's a little bit of cleanup and extra permitting as we open in Phoenix, and we have a grand opening scheduled in July, but it'll start renting sometime in the end of June. This is a really interesting project because it is, if you walk out the back door of the Diamondback Stadium, you walk into this project. It used to be a parking lot for Phoenix. Mount Hood is a massively large facility. It's probably one of the largest facilities in the state of Nevada. It's right by Nellis Air Force Base, and it is located by Nellis Air Force Base. You got a lot of housing, a lot of rooftops around it. It has boat and RV storage, and it's kind of on the path to a couple of the Nevada lakes. We've already have pre-reservations for the boat and RV storage on this particular project. This project is mostly climate controlled with some non-climate controlled. 5 mile population is decent. The whole area is great. Rents out there are decent. What we really like is we're going to have all the boat and RV storage on this one, which we don't have at the other Las Vegas facilities. All the boat and RV storage also is not going to be 90 degree. It's all going to be angled at 45 degrees because nobody can seem to park a trailer, boat, or RV when they have to do a hard turn, so it's much easier. Tucson, as you saw in the previous video, it's opportunity zone, and it is right across from one of the biggest shopping centers in the state of Arizona. When I say it's on the entrance to the highway, you turn onto the on-ramp exit and you enter the property. So it's literally on the on-ramp exit, so it's really easy to get to with a great view of the interstate. Everybody driving through there will see it. Everyone going to that shopping center will see it. Houston, this is the project opening next month. It's a great project. This one has actually ended up not being public storage. It ended up being CubeSmart because they had a heavier market presence in that particular area, so we chose to elected to go with CubeSmart on that one. It's in a great little area in Houston, and it has gone exceedingly fast. It will have been finished in like 48 weeks. And it also has a little bit of RV and boat storage, but not a lot. It's about 30 spaces. That's a couple of ways to get in touch. The best one is info@arthurhooddotcom, or Arthur@arthurhooddotcom is probably the best, is Arthur@arthurhooddotcom, because that comes straight to me. The other one goes to somebody checks it. So that's kind of it on this side of the storage, but I wanted to ask anybody if they had any questions about storage and what they thought of it, and any other questions about real estate in general. I'm involved in about every class you can think of.
Is your site scale, are they templates to the sites that you're going to? And the second question is, you mentioned a 10-year exit. I mean, what does that exit actually look like?
Two questions there. We have idea of templates. We have a roll-up door design, we have a vertical design, but every project is designed specifically for that site. We have a design team, an architecture firm that we use. They design it for that site. Our average deal, we try to be in 3 to 5 years. We're either exiting that deal to private equity or to some investment group, or we're starting to keep some where we sell them to ourselves to another company. So the original investor gets a return, but we're going to hold them for a REIT exit. The only thing we're holding 10 years are the 6 opportunity zone deals in order to get the tax benefit. Because on a 10-year exit, let's say you put in $100,000, At the end of the 10 years, you've clipped a coupon, you've gotten payments along the way, and you're going to exit with probably $350,000 additionally, although you've made 9 to 12% along the way. But then that money is tax-free completely. So you do whatever you want to do with it. On the shorter deals, we may have been exited in 3 years, so your 100 grand may only be worth 250, but you're gonna have some tax on it. And you may have only gotten distributions for the last 6 months because of the lease up period. But those distributions, but they accrue the preferred interest. From the day you invest, you're accruing a 10% or an 8% pref, depending on the deal. And that's prayed out as a priority.
Going back to the opportunity zone, if you invest it, are those closed out? And B, if they're not, if it's already in place, if I got in year 3, would I still get the tax-free treatment?
The ones that are in opportunity zones, 2 are not closed out. Tucson has a tiny bit left in it, and Bakersfield has a little bit left in it. Both of those you would be getting in now since construction has just started. You're basically at the 10-year clock now. There might be an answer of 90 or 120 days, but call it 10 years now.
What's the net of value you got left?
In which one?
Opportunity zones.
There's about $1 million left in Tucson, and in Bakersfield, there's about $1 million. We generally, most of our deals are about 35% equity, and the balance is debt. We're pretty heavy on the equity side. I've seen the ups and downs. I like to be pretty heavy equity. I think the exact number, I'd have to go look in my phone. I think we're going to take, in both of those deals, about 1.2 million total. We'll pull about $1 million of that now. We'll do a little like 250 round once they're completed for lease up expense, but that will be a different deal. They won't get the same benefit because they weren't in the deal as long. So about $1 million in each deal.
I think you mentioned that due to cost segregation, you got like 62 cents on the dollar written off in year 1. So if it's in an opportunity zone, basically, are you saying no depreciation recapture and no tax on gains on the exit?
No tax on gains on the exit, that's correct.
Wow.
Now in the non-op zone, even if we're only, going to get 50 or 60 cents on the dollar, still a pretty good first year write-off to that, especially if, if you're one of you is a real estate professional, you can use that passive loss against active income. Our minimums on some of the deals have been $250,000, but our stated minimum is $100,000. We've for Chris's group, we've rearranged our minimum to $100,000, and then I can do a quarter or a half unit, which is $25,000 or $50,000, but I then have to personally fund the difference to make a unit myself, which I don't mind doing, and I'm already an investor in the deals. $100,000 is our stated minimum. We've moved it from $250 to $100, but then we can do a quarter or a half unit, but we prefer larger the better. Right now, our largest investor, single individual investor, is 17 million, and we have a couple over 10 million. Then I have a couple of people that are 25,000 a project. My assistant and somebody else in the office partner up and put 25,000 every deal we do. So we're really all over the place. Somebody that's smaller that wants to grow with us, I have no problem doing a smaller deal. Yes, ma'am. And then just for this group, if you want to copy my AOL, which is HOODGROUP, the number 65 at AOL.com will always come to me. That rings back there 24/7. Hoodgroup65 at AOL.com. Go ahead.
Even wine storage. That's great. What other ventures are you looking to?
In the storage space, for this company, for your space, we're sticking just in traditional storage because it's how we're going to value it on the exit. But if a project is close to an art community or a wine community, we are adding a section in every project for art or wine that's a little bit more climate controlled, a little bit more secure. I personally am working a couple of projects that are more lifestyle storage. I'm doing a couple of developments myself where I'm building out 20 condos that aren't really condos, but it's a garage and a bedroom for kind of man caves for sale. Those are a little bit different, but I won't do them in this company because when we go to exit this, there's no way to value that the same as storage, so I keep those separate. But I really do think storage is going to always be there, and especially as people are living in smaller and smaller places, or even the larger homes now are just not being built with very much storage.
How are you acquiring your land?
Most of our land, we have some brokers out there. We have other people just bringing us land deals. Literally, we're looking at about 100 sites. We get interested in about 10 of them. And then by the time we're done, we're buying 2 or 3. Because it's really rooftop count, other storage in the area, average rate per square foot on rental. A pretty detailed jump into it, but
I'm just asking because, of course, I'm a land investor, so I come
Oh yeah, and we've done JVs on land. We really like land JVs where I don't have to come out of pocket for the land, especially if they'll subordinate the debt for the construction. Because if I get a piece of property, you bring it to me, it's got $1 million value, I do the entitlement, now I make it worth $2 million. Well, when I go to the bank, I can have a $2 million value piece of property. If you don't have debt on it, and you allow that to be put down as equity, we make you a member of the LP and secure you, but you then would have to subordinate to the construction financing. But we do that quite a bit.
Well, for today's special engagement, that we will co-op a deal that we can invest per door. So we become individual investors per door on your next deal.
We can put a group together to be investors in a particular project, which all of our deals are specific to the project.
Talking all about your other business. Yes.
Oh, yes, I should do that.
You didn't mention anything about, I mean, you do a couple houses here and there. I mean, you want to tell them a little bit about that for a second?
A little bit. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things going on right now. I have a piece of beachfront property, 200 feet on the beach in Perdido Key, Florida, which is directly across the street or down the street from the Flor-Bama. So that's Orange Beach over the bridge in Perdido Key. So I have a piece of property. It's 200 feet of sand. I'm joint venturing that property. They're paying me $13.7 million for it, but I'm joint venturing that property with Brett Robinson, which is the largest condominium developer down there. They've built all the Phoenix buildings in Orange Beach and Perdido Key, and they are launching another building. It's 30 units. They're in the pre-construction, pre-sale phase. Brett Robinson is totally different than any other developer in the area. They've averaged every deal they've done since the '08 crash. The units are worth about double by the time they've been completed 1 year. These units are starting at $2.3 million each. They'll probably be worth $4 million by the time the building's built and completed. They're going to have about $250,000 a year in rental income, give or take. That's about the average for these units. What makes Brett Robinson interesting, they're the only condo developer down there that they don't do, 10% deposit. It's write a check for the whole damn thing before they build it. Every building they've built, individual condo buyers come in. If the unit's $2 million, they write them a check for $2 million that morning. That's it. And they raise the prices every month as they sell units. And they've generally driven, a $2 million unit will be $3 million at the time of construction, which this one will start in the fall. And then they'll be $3.5, $4 million by the time the building's built and stabilized. They are doing something different because they're in Florida, not Alabama, so just across the bridge, but they're in Florida by half a mile. They are going to allow, for the first time ever with their bank Centennial, allowing people to do a 30% deposit and pay the rest at CO, certificate of occupancy. They've never done that before. They've always been a cash and carry, and they have their little network that's always invested with them. I mean, they've built, what are they up to, like Phoenix 27 now? They have 27 or 28 condominium buildings along the Alabama Gulf Coast. This will be their second project in Florida, their first ground up. And that's kind of why I joint ventured the land with them. I paid $4 million for the property. So, and then of course I've got entitlement carry costs, but that was a really good deal.
I emailed everybody that luxury beachfront property pamphlet. So you should have an email from me, Shauna at privatemoneyclub.com. Virtual audience and everybody here will have that property that he's talking about in their inbox from me.
And they all do in 1031s. They use an attorney down there, Jewel Herbert, and they do 1031s into all their development deals. I also, in the same area, I run a home building company, Mitchell Coastal Homes, which I'm the controlling shareholder, and we're always building homes down there. We do bring in some private capital to those, not always. When we do, we have a senior first mortgage facility, and then we'll pay on a second for the difference between 12 and 14%. And they're generally 6-month or 1 year notes. Turn pretty quickly. And if we have one that we get stuck with, which we've had a couple of times, we get stuck in the rental pool, we either refi it out or 18 months, or we just pay it off internally because nobody wants to be stuck in one of those that long. We have an 18-month where we'll just buy it out. The Brett Robinson, for anybody that has any larger chunks of cash, they actually do really well. You can look at their history on all their buildings. Since '08, they've doubled everybody's money within about, as far as value. It's just a big check to write. I sit here and argue whether or not you can or can't do that, but they've done it that way for 30 years. And they're definitely the number one in the area. They're the 10-ton gorilla. I mean, no one else could go down and demand before they've even bought property. They'll have all the money in the bank. In general, they'll have half the money in full from buyers a year before they do anything. But they've been the most successful. in that entire market that they have no debt in their books. And our home building is very interesting. We focus most in Baldwin County, Alabama, and a little bit over to Panama City, Florida. A lot of areas where I'm doing larger subdivisions. I'm entitling land, 100 acres, 200 acres, 300 acres for 200 to 600 lot subdivisions. Those I'm selling to the national home builders, the D.R. Horton. I just did one last year for D.R. Horton, but then I take in infill lots, usually in nicer neighborhoods. I'll pick up an infill lot or a tear down house, and I go in and build. I'm building about 30 houses a year in that market. Most of them are in the 450,000 exit price to about 800,000. So I'm doing a little bit nicer home than the track home builders, and a little bit less than a true custom home, even though they're pretty custom features. So I fill in that niche market in that area, and they're all 1,800 to 2,800 square feet. Baldwin County, and one of the biggest reasons that Baldwin County is growing so well, though Alabama has an income tax, it's a very minimal income tax. And though you can go literally 20 miles away and be in Florida and pay no income tax, the property tax in Florida is so significant that until you're making more than about $250,000 a year in W-2 income, you're cheaper to live in Alabama and pay the cheaper property tax than you are to live in Florida for the zero tax and the increase in property tax. Somewhere around that 250 is where that equation would flip. I was surprised not that many people know that, but Baldwin County is definitely one of the fastest growing counties. Airbus is moving in, their big facility there. There's that steel plant going in. Mobile's putting in a new airport at the Bayfront Airport. It's actually going to become the commercial airport and then you got the Pensacola Airport also halfway in between. Ob zones that are left is Tucson, that has a little bit left on it, and Bakersfield. With Tucson under construction, anybody wants to get into that, I'd like to do that pretty much immediately so we can close that 10-year gap. Bakersfield's I'd like to close that out in about 30 days because we're going to start running ground piping, and I have to kind of close them out as the last day of the last dollar, counts the 10 years, so appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Arthur.